Hey Frog fans, welcome into another episode of Indy Drill. It's the second one of these. It's the new way we are doing some of our midweek content over here at Frogs Insider. I am Jamie Plunkett. Melissa Treebosser will not be along this evening as this is a solo show. She will be back next Sunday for our regular big show, and then her next From the Other Side will come as we prepare to look at the Abilene Christian game in a couple of weeks. No From the Other Sideline this week because TCU is on a bye. But the Indy Drill rolls on. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. We truly do appreciate all the support. The podcast numbers have been insane since the start of August. You guys really, really needed some TCU football in your lives, and we're glad that you're tuning in here to get your TCU content fixed because we really do appreciate it. We love doing this, and every single season, the podcast numbers keep going up. More people keep finding the show. So many of you commented mustache throughout all of the podcast feeds and on the YouTube channel and all that stuff, which meant that you listened to at least the first hour of the last show. So thank you so much for doing that. We really do appreciate each and every one of you. It's such a cool thing to have this like community within a community. And we hope to keep growing. So if you could, as you're listening to this episode, go ahead, leave a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening to this episode, if you're on the YouTube channel, make sure you hit that like button and share a link. Send a link to somebody in your life who's a TCU fan who maybe needs to hear a little bit more TCU in their ears and on their screens, because we would love to be able to connect with more TCU folks. It's been so much fun over the years doing this show, and we want to just keep growing because we love doing this thing. So thanks to everybody who's been at day one. Thanks to everybody if this is your first episode ever listening. Shout out to you as well for jumping on the Frogs Insider bandwagon. It keeps on getting bigger, and there's plenty of room for a lot more folks. So super excited for all y'all to be here and listening to this. We are Frogs Insider, part of the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast Network. It's a little bit of a rebrand in year 2 of the network, but still thrilled to be a part of it. You can find that network wherever you get your podcasts just by searching for Dave Campbell's, and the feed will pop up. It's got our show, and it's got a show for every D1 program in the state of Texas. That's 13 different schools covered in one podcast feed. Pretty cool stuff. If that sounds like too much, go to the Frogs Insider feed. Just search Frogs Insider wherever you get your podcasts, and this feed will pop up, and this show will be in it. This show won't be in the Dave Campbell's feed because with 13 different shows, if everybody posted all of their content in that feed, it would be pretty jumbled. So we're one show a week, just the big Sunday night show with Mia and Melissa goes into the Dave Campbell's feed, and then all of our other stuff, including Indy Drill and From the Other Sideline, are in the Frogs Insider feeds only and up on the YouTube channel. So that's where you can get all the good stuff. We've got a couple announcements in the works we're still cooking on. Hopefully we'll get those up in the next few weeks and running because we've got some really cool potential partnerships on the horizon, and we're really excited to tell you guys all about it. So I think that's enough podcast business. We've got other things to do on this episode of Indy Drill, like answer Twitter questions. So let's just jump right into it. I asked you guys to give me some Twitter questions. We got quite a few really good ones actually this week. So we're going to dive in. Brian Banks asks a couple. The first one, he says, TCU scores 70 points over the next 3 games. I'm going to have to get a pen for this one. I can already tell. TCU scores 70 points over the next 3 games. How would you divide them up to make sure we get 3 wins? Okay, this is great. So we've got 70 points total. We have the next 3 games for TCU are Abilene Christian, SMU, and Arizona State. So if we just divided 70 by 3, that's what? Remainder of 1. Roughly 23 points a game. So let's do this. Let's do it this way. TCU is going to score a lot of points against Abilene Christian in real life. But I think the defense holds them to fewer points than what North Carolina managed in week 1. So let's say TCU holds Abilene Christian to 10 points. Then you'd really only need 14. to beat them, right? So let's take 14 away from 70 for the Abilene Christian game. And that leaves us with 56. Now you've got 56 points between SMU and Arizona State. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I wasn't terribly impressed by SMU's offense in week one. Now, said the same thing about their offense last year against Nevada when they almost lost to the Wolfpack. Obviously, they had some quarterback issues at that point that they've since resolved with Kevin Jennings. But their running game wasn't very good in week one. Kevin Jennings isn't he's a good quarterback, and I think the Penn State game has left an impression on people that isn't necessarily a full, accurate depiction of his abilities. But I think that when you look back to the TCU-SMU game last year, there were so many things that went wrong for TCU in the first quarter. The turnovers, the penalties, the botched defense, it was just rough, right? It was a rough game. I don't think SMU is going to get anywhere close to 66 points again this season against TCU, especially considering they're coming to Fort Worth. I think they could very well get around like the 27 to 30 range, right? And so then you're thinking, okay, well, if they get 27, you've got to score at least 28. But I think TCU's defense is in pretty good shape. So I'm going to say that TCU is going to need 27 points to beat SMU. And that leaves us with, what is this? 29 points, which is a number that I think you can reach in football. It's absolutely a number you can reach in football. But that leaves you 29 points for Arizona State, which short week, road game, Friday night, all of those things, I think you're going to need your offense to be really clicking to maybe help a defense that's a little bit tired and traveling. So let's go with that. We'll go 14 points for Abilene Christian, 27 points for SMU, and then the rest of the 29 we'll put towards Arizona State. I think if you get those three numbers, TCU is 3-0 in that stretch of games. Brian Banks then asks, gun to your head, will Adam Schobel be our starting quarterback in Ireland? I don't know why you're putting a gun to my head, Brian. No. Josh Hoover will be the quarterback next year in Ireland. I'm not sure that Josh goes to the NFL draft this year. I'm not sure. Will he have a year worthy of going to the NFL draft? Possibly. Did he show some things in week one that led to people talking about his growth and development? Absolutely, he did. The rollout to his left, throwing back across his body, was fantastic. And that was a truly true, that was an NFL throw, right? That was an NFL throw, but he's only a junior, right? He's still only a junior. And I just don't know, with his size and with some of the other questions that NFL scouts had about him coming into this year. If he addresses all of those, then maybe he goes in the NFL draft, but I don't think that that's a foregone conclusion yet. So I'm going to say no to the question, will Adam Schobel be TCU's starting quarterback in Ireland next season? Brian's final question, what is your ideal SMU Baylor result? One blows out the other, 7 OTs, Baylor loses via bazooka again. I was having this conversation with a couple people today at TCU's practice, and my thing is, with this game specifically, I'm going to pay as little attention to it as possible, frankly. I think the ideal result for TCU is SMU winning, because it does two things. It keeps SMU undefeated ahead of their game with TCU in a couple weeks, which means that SMU will be moving up in the rankings. You'll have more eyeballs on that game, so on and so forth. A loss to Baylor, or a loss for Baylor in this instance, doesn't necessarily do anything for their conference hopes, right? But what it does do is it puts them at 0-2. And the heat probably turns up a little bit on Aranda at that point. Things start to get a little uncomfortable down in Waco, and a rival in turmoil is a rival that I like for TCU. So I would say it probably is best for TCU, if SMU wins this football game on Saturday, will I be paying a ton of attention to it? Probably not. Brian Nenninger, I think I said that right, Brian. I hope I did. Says, we have seen more guards pulling and running between the tackles than in past seasons. Was this intentional by Briles based on personnel, or is this a philosophical change in the run game? I think one game is not a big enough sample size to really know everything that Kendall Briles and AJ Ricker want to do with the offensive line this season. I was heartened to see more pulls because we didn't see a ton of that last year, like you mentioned. I think part of that had to do with what North Carolina's defense was doing, which was a lot of odd man front. They didn't have a ton of really good athletes along the defensive line. And I mean, you see on those two long touchdown runs that TCU had, the Barnes and Battle touchdown runs. I mean, both guards pulled on both of those runs and picked up linebackers and helped open that hole. I mean, on Battle's run, Bruno pulls to the left side of the line and hardly has anyone to block. He kind of throws his shoulder and I think it was a safety that had dropped down. But really, I mean, that wasn't a necessary block for Battle to score a touchdown on that play. I don't know that North Carolina's defensive front did much to challenge TCU's offensive line in a way where they had to do a whole lot. So those simple kind of guard pulls that they were running for most of the night, once they found out that that was working and that North Carolina didn't really have an answer for it, of course they kept going back to that well. Will we see them do that more and more as the season advances? I'm sure it'll continue to be in their bag, but I don't know that they're necessarily going to go to that well specifically as much as they did in week one. But it was working. It made sense to keep going back to it. Lo and behold, TCU ran for 248 yards, and here I am with the mustache on my face. Mando Frog says, is this a new Sonny Dykes we are seeing? Normally, Sonny doesn't run up scores, but it looked like it was intentional that game. Do you think he'll keep that mentality all season? I wouldn't be shocked to see him have the offense assert itself more. We saw that near the end of last year. I think the benefit that Sonny is working with this year is an improved defense. I don't know that we'll see him run up the score a ton, but there are some other games where you would expect it, right? So it makes sense that he wanted to keep scoring in this game because of exactly what he said to Holly Rowe on the field after the game and what he said to us in the media room after the game. And that's TCU felt a little disrespected by all the conversation around this football game, and none of it was really about TCU. So he wanted to make sure that they left that stadium talking about TCU, and I think they did that relatively effectively. We'll talk about TV ratings and conversations here in a little bit on the show. But the Colorado game, they haven't played Colorado since the opener in 23. The Kansas State game, they got mollywopped by Kansas State 2 years ago. The SMU game, the Baylor game, all those are opportunities. Those are get-back opportunities for Sonny Dykes and TCU this year. And if they play up to the standard that they showed on Monday night against UNC and continue to improve and build on that kind of a performance, then yeah, I think we could see a lot of get-back opportunities come to fruition for TCU. Will they necessarily be running up the score blowouts? No, but I think Sonny's going to be aggressive like he was in week one in a lot of different ways. Mondo Frog also asks, will starters be done at halftime against ACU? If everything goes right. Here's an interesting thing, though. Abilene Christian is in a little bit over a week, and it's a night game. It's 7 p.m. kickoff. There will be teams in college football that will have already played 4 games by the time TCU kicks off its second game. Is that an advantage? Is that a disadvantage? I have no earthly idea, frankly, but I will be interested to see if they use this as an opportunity to really get guys into a rhythm, really get guys some more game reps, or if they say, hey, it's Abilene Christian, we've got SMU next week, get in, get out, get it on with it, right? I wouldn't be shocked if there were some guys sitting by the third quarter, depending on what the score is, but depends on what the score is. And then his last question from Mando Frog is, are they going to continue using the running back room or down to 2? I'm I'm going to assume you're talking about the whole running back room versus like just Kavorian Barnes and Jeremy Payne. We actually had a chance to talk to Jimmy Smith, the running back coach, today, and he gave us some really good insight. He said, Kavorian Barnes was with the ones because he earned the job. And he told the running backs today, every week, you've got to go and you've got to earn your role. You've got to earn your job. So I think that it's safe to say Kavorian Barnes is the front runner to be kind of the lead back. But as far as how those other four guys really stack up with Trent Battle and Nate Palmer and Jeremy Payne and John Denman, that's all going to kind of shake out week to week, I think, based on what Jimmy Smith was saying earlier today. So I think we'll continue to see more than just two running backs get snaps. Obviously, it helps when you're winning by 34 to get some of those other guys some snaps, but every single running back that touched the football on Monday night did something really well. And that's a good problem to have is, hey, how do we divvy up these splits when every guy showed you something in week one? Horned Frog Insider. This is not me asking myself a question. Horned Frog Insider asks, thought on the amount of subbing Avalos does in the secondary. Could we see any changes at nickel and linebacker with how well Jackson and Carroll played? I'm shocked Carroll graded that low. Yeah, PFF is an interesting metric. I'm almost thought about going away from it this year in my snap count article over at Horned Frog Blitz, just because it's not... Some of the methodology feels a little funky to me, but I'm still going to go with it this year. And if I find something better, I will probably switch to that either middle of this year or next year, depending on just my ability to access some of those grades and whatnot. But to the question, thoughts on the amount of subbing Avalos does in the secondary? I think it's great. Look, if you've got 5 or 6 corners that can get you good reps, play 5 or 6 corners that can get you good reps. If you've got 4 or 5 safeties that can do the same thing, do it. Same with linebackers, same with defensive tackles, same with edges, everybody along the defensive line, everybody in the defense, right? Because there is a cumulative effect to limiting guys' snap counts. And, take the nickel position, for instance, since that's one of the ones you mentioned. When you've got Austin Jordan and Kylan Jackson, who are both perfectly capable of maybe playing, 35, 40 snaps a game. But, you want to get them both on the field because they have different skill sets. Jordan's a little bit better in coverage. Kylan's a little bit better coming downhill. There's no reason to not play situational football with those guys. And there's no reason not to let them both get, 20 to 25 snaps a game if the game dictates that, because at the end of the season, then you're looking at two guys that have each played, just a rough number of 350 to 400 snaps instead of one guy who barely has his legs under him anymore because he's played 650 snaps. And so there's this cumulative effect to letting guys get more reps or like having more of share of reps, just because by end of October, middle of November, you want guys to have as fresh of legs as possible. Everybody's going to be banged up at that point, but maybe if you've played 150 fewer snaps, you're in a better spot than you would have been otherwise. So I'm fine with it. I know people really don't like it, especially when we used to see Doug Meacham do it on offense with all the wide receivers and stuff. But in the secondary and on defense, I don't really see it as being that big of an issue, especially when you have the kind of depth it appears TCU has, as Stephen Johnson said on our live post-game show, and as Sonny Dykes has said a couple times this year, that dependable depth that TCU appears to have, I think it's totally fine for that cumulative kind of rest effect that it gives people. Steve Doyle asks, will the Frogs ever recover from the natty loss to Colorado in the 5-7 season with national media? If UNC wins, they are top 15 ranked. We barely nudge, stay behind K-State, and now the narrative is UNC sucks. Okay. I don't think UNC is ranked in the top 15 if they beat TCU on Monday night, but I do think they probably are ranked. There is something to that, Steve. But I think this win did go a long way to helping the national media or to help TCU's brand kind of recover from those bumps in the road that you mentioned. Now, if TCU had come in and won by a field goal, I don't think it would have done nearly as much, but winning in that convincing of a way, I think was huge for TCU. I think it went a long way to helping rehabilitate TCU's image in the minds and the eyes of not only national media folks, but fans who watched that game. And there were a lot of fans that watched that game. So I think it did. Of course, we would have loved for everyone to come out of that and exclusively only talk about TCU, but that was never going to happen. It was never going to happen because of who was coaching on the other team and the narratives around that other team. But I will say, since Melissa and I recorded, I've listened to a couple more shows. I've read a couple more folks who have been very complimentary of TCU and been TCU-centric in their coverage of that game. So I think the tides are beginning to turn for TCU in that way, and I think that that's really helpful. Master of Activities. Could you give us a quick breakdown of Hoover when facing cover 3 versus cover 2 man trying to see something? JD, if you're trying to see whether I know ball or not, I'm not an X's and O's guy, but I can tell you this. At the beginning of the game against North Carolina had a lot of one high safety coverage, press coverage at their corner spots, and as soon as Jordan Dwyer dusted Marcus Allen on that touchdown, and Josh dropped a dime in the bucket, you never saw that single high safety press coverage again. Single high safety corner press coverage again. You didn't see it. They went completely away from it. There were moments where they had 3 safeties drop back. There were moments where they were 2 high safeties and their corners were drop coverage 10, 12 yards off the line of scrimmage. They were absolutely terrified of Josh Hoover cooking them deep again. And that's why you saw all of these checkdowns to wide receivers, to running backs that gained 8, 10, 12 yards throughout the rest of the game. Those checkdowns to Kavorian Barnes and Jeremy Payne, the quick outs, the 8 to 10 yard outs that he was hitting with Jordan Dwyer 3 or 4 times, or the slants over the posts over the middle to Manjack that were, those intermediate passing game. It's all because of that first touchdown pass that Hoover threw, that single high coverage. And so they did. They went a lot of cloud. They went a lot of cover 3 throughout the rest of the game, and they seemed content to just allow Josh Hoover and this TCU offense to nickel and dime them down the field. I will say this. I've rewatched the game a couple times, and North Carolina's defense was bad, man. They were bad. It didn't really matter what the coverage call was for them. It didn't really matter because the personnel was so bad. And they weren't where they were supposed to be. The effort was lacking a lot of the time. It was like TCU sucked the life out of them and they just quit. And they didn't hit their spots. They didn't fill gaps well. They didn't cover well. It was a mess on that side of the ball. And, if I'm a North Carolina fan, I'm really, really concerned about the defensive side of the football, not only for this year, but in the years to come, because we know who the DC is over there. And it's the son of the head coach. And it seems like we have sped run to a Kirk Ferentz, Brian Ferentz kind of situation at North Carolina. But that's their problem, not ours. So to the question, that's what I got for you. Eric Sorensen says, do you foresee the running back workload continuing to be Barnes as RB1 and then battle Payne, Palmer, Denman? Or does it all depend on opponent and game script? Like, I kind of answered this one already, but Jimmy Smith said today that it's going to be Barnes, and then everybody else is really, including Barnes, has to continue to earn that RB1 spot. But all the guys are going to earn kind of their workload week to week, which I like when you have a room that looks and appears to be as talented as this one is, and as developed as this one has become. Don't just set something in stone and let it ride, because you might lose a guy that way. But let him earn it. Let him continue to battle for it, and may the best man win. Carson, what's up, my brother? He says, you mentioned before the season began that you think Hoover is great, but the lack of national attention on him prevents him from being in the Heisman conversation. Did embarrassing UNC on national television help Hoover's chances, or do you still think they remain the same? So here's the thing about what I was saying this offseason, because you're right. There were, I did talk about this lack of national attention, and it wasn't necessarily just Hoover related. It was TCU related. There were teams across the Big 12 and quarterbacks across the country that really sucked the oxygen out of those conversations and just left no room for Hoover and TCU. But, I don't know that it was necessarily Heisman related. It was just attention related. And I don't know that Hoover because of some of the other names across the country, would have been considered a Heisman finalist possibility, even if he had been more front and center in some of those conversations. But I will say that this is a really good question to kind of lead into the next section, which we're going to get to, which is, did embarrassing UNC help? Yes. I mean, CBS Sports, our parent company over at Horned Frog Blitz, has Hoover ranked as the number one quarterback in college football right now. Now, will that last? Probably not, but it's a good place to be after one football game for sure. Does that make him a legitimate Heisman finalist candidate? I mean, it's just one game. He threw for 284 yards and a pair of touchdowns, looked really good most of the time, had kind of a funky interception that's going to be on his ledger from now on. But look, I think that anytime you can win a football game as a standalone football game and do it in the fashion that TCU did against the kind of team that TCU did and have your quarterback play the way he did, there's nothing bad about it. There's nothing bad about that attention that's going to come from that. And if that is the first step towards Josh Hoover's campaign towards New York, then so be it. But if he doesn't make it to New York, I don't think it's necessarily going to be because of the lack of off-season attention. It'll be because he didn't do enough in the regular season, and it'll probably be because, you know, there are media blitzes involved with this kind of stuff. One of the things that I still am a little annoyed with when it comes to TCU is the fact that they didn't really ever do a full-on Heisman campaign for Max. Like, you think back, they didn't. I mean, it's hard when he wasn't your starting quarterback at the beginning of the year, but after that Oklahoma game, they should have just been full out, just full send on it. And we didn't really see anything around Max and the Heisman until the Texas game, which was the second to last game of the regular season, third to last game of the regular season. Like, it just didn't make much sense to me how hesitant TCU was to promote Max as a Heisman hopeful. And I just wonder, you know, it was a really close vote that year. Obviously, Caleb Williams came away with the trophy, but Max finished second, and by a pretty good margin. What would a national campaign for Max's Heisman hopes have done for him? Would he have won? Probably not. Maybe. But I just hope that this year, if there's an opportunity to do that with Josh, that TCU will take full advantage of that. All right, let's take a quick break. Take a deep breath, and then we will be back. TCU and North Carolina, big ratings boon for both teams. We're going to get into that in just a second. Okay. TCU North Carolina on Monday night, standalone game on Labor Day, drew 6.6 million viewers on ESPN. That's the most for a Labor Day college football game since 2016, so 9 seasons. It peaked at 8.8 million. It was the number one game on cable. It was the 5th most watched game of the week. Incredible amount of eyes on TCU and North Carolina. And this is where, you know, we kind of get the counter to, well, a lot of folks came out of this game still talking about TCU, or still talking about North Carolina and Bill Belichick and kind of the debacle that it was for them. But at the same time, 6.6 million viewers watched TCU lay that hammer down on them, up to 8 and almost 9 million at its peak. And so at the end of the day, you know, you think about opportunities for TCU to play standalone games. This is one of the big reasons that happens, is because when you can get more eyeballs on TCU, when you can get more people paying attention to your football team, and you can win a game while they're doing that, I think it goes a long way to going back to, who was it? Steve's question earlier about, you know, repairing the brand and repairing the reputation. Almost 9 million people checked in on that football game. More than 6.5 million people watched that football game for the most part. That was the average viewership from start to finish of that football game. Yeah, that's brand. That's a reputation builder right there. So I think that's phenomenal for TCU. And at the end of the day, all you can ask for is being able to put your best foot forward, right? Put your best foot forward, grab people's attention, and shift as much of the conversation as you possibly can towards your program versus whatever the conversation was about before the football game started. And this goes back to something that Sonny Dykes has been saying for from the start of fall camp all the way through this week. He just said it earlier on Wednesday of this week as well, that at the end of the day, there are ways that you can manufacture attention for your program. We see a lot of schools do it every offseason, but the best way and the most consistent way to get people to pay attention to you and respect you and understand your brand and like your brand is to win football games. TCU did that in week 1 in front of a incredible audience. I didn't go through and look and see, but I'm pretty sure that's the most viewed TCU football game since the Colorado game in 23. It wouldn't shock me at all. And so you're talking about in the next biggest opportunity TCU had to make a statement, they did so. And that's huge. That's fantastic. Really love that is how that ended up for TCU. There were only a few games that were more than TCU's. Let me pull it up here. Top 10 most watched games of the week. Texas at Ohio State pulled in 16.6 million. That was insane. Notre Dame at Miami, 10.8 million. Alabama at Florida State, 10.7 million. LSU at Clemson, 10.4 million. None of those were on traditional cable, though. Those were all ABC and Fox, I believe. And ESPN's most watched game of the week, TCU and North Carolina, they're at number 5 with 6.6 million. The next game below them, if we keep going, Virginia Tech at South Carolina was 5.4 million. Georgia Tech at Colorado, the Deion Sanders effect, right? 3.7 million. That was I believe, Friday night game on ESPN. Nebraska and Cincinnati, a Thursday night game on ESPN, 3.3 million. So TCU and North Carolina doubled Nebraska, Cincinnati. And then Auburn, Baylor, 2.8 billion, good Lord. And Syracuse, Tennessee, was 2.6 million. So a lot of helmet games, a lot of big recognizable brands on that list, and TCU North Carolina was 6.6 million, outpaced pretty much all of them, outpaced every single one on ESPN. Really good showing for TCU. Really excellent opportunity to make an impression on some folks, and they did just that. All right. Take a quick pause, and we're going to come back. The Big 12 just entered into a partnership with Allstate. We're going to break down what that means for the league when we come back. Okay. The Big 12 sent out a press release on Thursday announcing a partnership with Allstate. And this is from the press release. The Big 12 and Allstate have entered into a multi-year agreement launching the Allstate Championship Series. It's a first of its kind year-round platform that celebrates Big 12 championships and student athletes. The Allstate Championship Series will serve as the pathway to the Allstate Commissioner's Cup, awarded annually to the Big 12 school that earns the most points through performance in conference championship games, graduation rates, academic and student services, and community engagement. As part of the agreement, Allstate will become the presenting sponsor of all Big 12 Olympic sport championships and receive premier integration across the conference's marquee events, including the Big 12 football championship and the men's and women's basketball championships. The partnership also includes digital and in-venue branding at Big 12 championships, or original storytelling content, showcasing student-athlete leadership and achievement, and Allstate's designation as the official insurance partner of the Big 12 Conference. So, what does that mean? Well, essentially, Allstate will be the presenting sponsor for all Big 12 Olympic sport championships and the Commissioner's Cup. The Commissioner's Cup has existed for a while, but it's cool that they've got a sponsorship for it now. This is a big check for the Big 12. I was talking to one person who had an understanding of this contract and said Allstate is taking very good care of the Big 12 when it comes to this contract. Didn't get a specific number, but that's a good sign. The Big 12 and Allstate had gone through a couple different iterations of this conversation. They had started to just try and discover if there was any kind of partnership available. Those conversations morphed into, would this be a conference naming rights situation? Like, are we going to be the Allstate 12 now, or is this the Allstate Big 12? Whatever it might be. Those conversations pivoted into this one in recent months, where Allstate is going to be the presenting sponsor for all of these championships. But at the end of the day, this is just another attempt from Brett Yormark to try and close that revenue gap between the Big 12 and the SEC and the Big 10. And he's done a couple big partnerships like this now, because he announced the PayPal one back in June, which is dealing with NIL and rev sharing payments and helping the league with that. And now you've got this one that's helping sponsor some of the conference championships. Those are two big paydays for the league that are going to see a lot of that revenue go towards specific institutions. And that's great for the Big 12. It helps kind of continue to push them in the direction of being kind of the third power conference from a revenue generating standpoint, and helps close that gap. And we know that now more than ever, it's really important for the Big 12 to be trying to close that gap any way they can. So this is a good partnership. I don't think it's going to be too intrusive, although we're all going to get sick and tired of Allstate commercials by the end of it, I'm fairly certain. And I'm watching the Cowboys just absolutely fart and fall down right now. That's really good. Should probably turn that game off. But yes, no, Big 12 and Allstate, really good to see them come to terms on this. I think this was a really happy kind of middle ground for what both parties wanted out of these conversations. And again, big check to the Big 12, helps them inch a little bit closer to the SEC and the Big 10, which is never a bad thing. And it doesn't seem like they really gave up anything, the Big 12, for that check. So again, really nice to see them get all of that figured out, and get that deal in place before any Olympic sport championships have already come and gone. This is a multi-year deal. My understanding is that it's at least 3 years, but could be up to maybe 5 or 6. I know the PayPal deal with the Big 12 is 5. I'm not sure if they got all the way there with this Allstate one, but I will try and check on that. Okay, let's take another quick break. I need some more water. And then we're going to talk about a new transfer window that is coming to college football, replacing the old transfer windows. And then we'll get into some picks after that. Okay. So the Division I FBS Oversight Committee is essentially the rules committee for Division I sports, and specifically football. So what they have done this week is that from time to time, this committee will get together. They will review kind of the systems and the structures and the calendars around college football, and they will make recommendations for improvement. What they have done with this latest recommendation, which came out this week, came out on Thursday, is that they would eliminate the current transfer portal windows, one of which is in December, one of which is in April, and replace them with a single transfer window in early January. So right now there's a 20-day period in December and a 10-day period in April where student athletes can enter the transfer portal. Those 30 days are the only time during the year that a player can enter the transfer portal, aside from the 30-day window that opens anytime a head coach leaves, or if you're a graduate transfer, because then you can just hit the portal whenever you want, basically. Those would go away. The December and April portal periods would go away, and instead there would be a 10-day portal window from January 2nd to the 11th where football players could enter the transfer portal. That's a pretty significant change, to say the least. It consolidates a 30-day window that's broken up into 2 blocks down to one 10-day window. And it does it at a really interesting time in the football calendar, because in early January, obviously bowl games are still being played. The national championship is still being played. Who knows how the new playoff structure, whenever we find out what that is, impacts this window. It just doesn't make sense to me for there to be a portal window open when games are still being played. Now, I understand the need for there to be some flexibility and fluidity, and for players to be able to need to leave between semesters, right? And so this is kind of where the FBS Oversight Committee is caught up, is because it's not like, oh, hey, well, let's just push it to late January. Well, classes have already started for most schools in late January. And so you can't just have a kid hit a portal and then show up on another campus and already be 3 weeks behind class. Like, it's just not how they're going to operate. It just doesn't work that way. And so they're really kind of prohibited by class schedules and that kind of thing, which is why we've always seen this weirdly timed December portal situation. Is they're trying to figure out when most folks are done with finals and when guys can go and hit the portal without it disrupting their academic careers, which are still a priority for the NCAA as much as they aren't a priority for the fans and for some of the students at this point. But this would do away with the December and April window, create a 10-day portal window in early January that would once again be disruptive to the postseason football schedule. I'm sure coaches will love that. But another part of this recommendation is that it would make all of December a recruiting dead period. And what a dead period is not a full no contact period. Coaches would still be able to call and text recruits, but you would not be able to make any on or off campus recruiting visits. So a dead period means a recruit can't come to campus for an official or an unofficial visit. You can't go make a house call on a recruit, can't go shake mom's hand, pull an Edwards run and eat some gumbo, do whatever it is. You can't do any of that in December. Now, there's a pretty important window of time in December called the early signing period, where you're trying to get pretty much all of your top recruits signed on the dotted line to commit to coming to your school. And there are a lot of flips that happen in December. There are a lot of last second visits that happen in December right now. One TCU example specifically, everybody's favorite talking point over fall camp, Jacoby Hayes. He flipped to TCU like 3 days before the early signing period last December. I'm pretty sure he was on campus a week before that as well. So this would, making all of December a dead period for recruiting would be a dramatic shift away from what has been the norm and the standard for the last, 10 years since the early signing period was implemented. I don't know fully how all of that would work. It seems like it's an attempt to take something off of coaches' plates in December when it's an incredibly busy time of the year. You're getting ready for hopefully conference championships. You're getting ready for postseason, whatever it is, starting to scout guys that are hitting the portal, all this, that, and the other. Well, you take away the portal window, so that's one less thing off your plate. Take away the opportunity to host guys on visits or go make house calls. That's another thing off your plate. But the problem is, what are you doing with the early signing period at that point? Doesn't really align with what coaches need or what schools need at the beginning of December for all of that stuff. Now, I don't know that it's the most visits in the world at that time of year, but I think it's pretty critical to be able to be in contact with your recruits the final few weeks leading up to when they're signing. And if you need to go, make one last pitch to mom and comfort her and to reassure her that your kiddo is going to be okay in our care for the next 4 years. Not being able to do that is a little bit of a handcuff that I don't know the committee has fully fleshed out in their thought process here. A third part of this proposal too, and you talk about squeezing that even more. Not that, I don't know, maybe this is less impactful than it sounds. But a third part of this proposal would delay when prospective student athletes can receive their official written offer from a school. So right now, kids get verbal offers all the time. Kids make verbal commitments all the time. But you can't get your formal official written offer from a school until August 1st going into your senior year of high school. And what that means is all conversations prior to that are just speculative. Like, hey, this is kind of what we offer. This is what the scholarship is. This is what this, that, and the other. All the details are not presented in writing until August 1st. This proposal would shift that date to November 15th of the prospect's senior year of high school. So it would delay it by 2.5 full months, 3.5 full months, August, September, October, November. 3.5 full months where kids aren't getting details. And then pair that with the second change of November 15th to the start of December being a dead period for recruiting. Well, that's not a lot of time in the middle of the regular season, which also includes the Thanksgiving holiday, to hash out any details that student athletes might have questions about, or their parents might have questions about, or their agents might have questions about. So I don't understand. Maybe I'm making too much. Maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill with this one. I need to check in with some folks and see how much that truly impacts things. But not being able to get a written offer until the 15th of November your senior year, when most of these kids are expected to sign less than a month later, it doesn't quite make a ton of sense to me. Again, I'll check on that and see if maybe I'm making too much out of that. But all of this together makes a really interesting package for a proposal. When you consider, all right, we're going to consolidate down to 10-day window, 10-day window for transfers. It's going to happen right at the beginning of January. All of December's a dead period. Kids aren't getting written offers until the middle of November now, their senior year. These feel like three really big shifts in the schedule for college football. Just the kind of the annual calendar for college football. We'll see. There's a formal vote that takes place on October 1st, so none of this is official yet. None of this is impending or for sure going to happen. A vote happens on October 1st. I'm sure there will be a lot of conversations between now and then. It's about a month away, to maybe figure out some of the details around this, see if this is exactly what they want, if they want to shuffle some things around, all that kind of stuff. But I'll be interested to keep tracking this proposal for the next month, just to see what ends up taking shape and whether it passes that vote on October 1st. Okay, one last break, and then we're going to get into some picks, and then we're going to get the heck out of here. Picks time, week 2 picks time. We've got 5 games that we're picking this week, down from 9. I'm trying to scale this part back a little bit because I got my ass kicked in week 1. We're going to try and minimize the damage here moving forward. So let's jump right into the first pick of the week. Iowa State hosting Iowa in Ames, 11 a.m. on Fox. Iowa State is a 3-point favorite in this game. Fun fact, stat of the day for this game: Iowa State has not beaten Iowa by more than 3 points since 2005. But I'll say this: Iowa looks bad on offense. Iowa State looks legitimate on offense. And I know they find the most creative ways to fart and fall down in this rivalry game. There's a reason it's called El Assico. But I think Iowa State gets it done by more than 3 this time around. I really like Rocco Becht. I like the receivers they brought in. I think their running game is strong. Their defense looks solid as all get out. And Iowa just doesn't do it for me on offense. Just doesn't do it for me. So I'll be curious to see how this game plays out, but I've got Iowa State -3. Next, Baylor at SMU, 11 a.m. on the CW. Baylor cursed by the CW for this game. They're a 2.5-point dog in Dallas. A little bit interesting coming off that Auburn game where they lost by 2 touchdowns. Obviously, Jackson Arnold ran a lot on them, and Kevin Jennings is very mobile. But if you think about the way that Jackson Arnold ran the football, he was running a lot between the tackles. He was running a lot as kind of a designed run, and that's not really how Kevin Jennings moves the football on the ground. He's more of a scramble, get outside the tackle box and run kind of guy. And you think about the difference in that and how you prepare for that. I think Baylor might be more prepared for that SMU offense than they were Auburn's. I also like a little bit of a rebound from Baylor's offense. I thought that Sawyer Robertson had some missed opportunities. The whole offense had some missed opportunities. And I think that SMU's defense doesn't present the same challenge that Auburn's does. So I like Baylor +2.5 here. I know I said that it would probably be best for SMU to win this football game about 30 minutes ago in this show, but I do think that Baylor ends up either losing by a point or coming away with the close win in this football game. All right, next pick. Kansas at Mizzou. The first time these two rivals have played in over a decade, close to 15 years, I believe, which is just absolutely ridiculous. I'm glad it's coming back. This game's played at 2:30 p.m. on Saturday on ESPN2. Kansas is a 6.5-point dog. I've loved what I've seen from their offense the first few weeks, but I don't know that they've seen even remotely close to a defense like they're going to see from Missouri on the road against an SEC opponent. I'm not sure Kansas will cover this spread. I'm not sure. I've got Missouri winning by a touchdown or more. I think this game is a little bit more high scoring than people anticipate. But I don't see Kansas coming away with this win, unfortunately, for the Big 12 and for Jalen Daniels, because he has shown quite a resurgence this year after struggling the last year and a half or so. All right, next pick. Arizona State at Mississippi State. This is the opposite of the last game we just talked about. Arizona's going on the road to an SEC team, and they're almost a touchdown favorite. They are a 6.5-point favorite against the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs are bad. I'm just not a believer in their quarterback. Arizona State didn't look great against Northern Arizona. They struggled with a couple things. I don't know if they get above the 6.5 line, but I am fully expecting Arizona State to come away from Starkville with a win. That game's 6:30 p.m. on ESPN2. I think the Sun Devils come away with a lot of media hype after going on the road and beating an SEC team. And then the last pick is an in-state pick. I'm very excited about this football game, 2:30 p.m. on ESPN+. This is probably what I'll be paying more attention to than the Baylor game at the same time. That's UTSA hosting Texas State. This is a huge rivalry. It's gotten really hateful over the last couple of years as both teams have gotten better and better. Obviously, Texas State is migrating out of conference to go to the Pac-12 in a couple of years. But right now, UTSA, those Roadrunners are a 4.5-point favorite, and I like them in this football game. They've looked excellent early this season. Texas State has struggled a little bit. I'm on the Texas State under for their win total as well this season. And so give me UTSA -4 in this football game. And that's going to do it for this episode of Indy Drill. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. If you were watching on YouTube, thanks for listening wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave a rating and review, like and subscribe to the channel, and share the show with a friend so we can continue to grow and get in the ears of more Horned Frogs. Melissa will be back next episode when we regather and start to mosey on our way towards looking at Abilene Christian. But for now, I will talk to you guys next time. Go Frogs.